Hello, I'm Waqar Rizvi, and this is Scope. In the first segment of today's show, we're going to be discussing Mahmoud Abbas and his announcement that the Palestinian Authority is ending all of its agreements with Israel and the United States, also including agreements regarding security. So essentially handing over the occupied peoples to the occupier in some ways, paraphrasing, of course, many of those words that he would have said. That's important, isn't it? Because Abbas has said this before as well. So the question on many people's minds is how exactly will this play out on the ground? Back in July 2019, he had spoken about this when Israel was demolishing homes. He mentioned the exact same thing in February 2020 as well, that Palestine was ending its agreements with Israel as well as the U.S. Will he actually implement this, or will he have to walk this back again? This is all in the context, of course, one remembers, of the Trump Middle East peace plan, as well as Netanyahu's promise to annex the occupied West Bank, parts of the occupied West Bank, that is, in that deal that he's come to with Benny Gantz to lead Israel at this time, as he still very much has to go through those trials against him. Let's discuss all of that a bit further. We're now joined with Daoud Kuttab, who is a Palestinian journalist and columnist. He's joining us now from Amman. And joining us from Sao Paulo is Karina Stange Calandrin, who is an international relations professor and undergraduate program coordinator at Lagnado in Brazil. Joining us, thank you both for your time today, Karina and Daoud. Daoud, let me start with you. What do you make of Abbas's announcement at this time? Is it a complete surprise? Is he in a corner? Did he have no other choice?
It seems to be serious. His supporters and his deputies are saying this is a strategic decision. Apparently, right after the press statement, there was a direct message that was sent to both the Israelis and to the Americans that this is a genuine kind of ceasing of the relationship. So basically, the security part of the Oslo agreement has been ended, but that doesn't mean that they are handing everything back to the Israelis. On the contrary, they're holding on to the semi-government that has been established, and they're insisting that that is the Palestinian foundation for a Palestinian state. So, I don't think they're giving up or they're sending the Israelis into taking responsibility. But if the Israelis decide to challenge this issue and move in, I think that would be quite violent, because they will defend their own territories.
Karina, what are your thoughts? How will this affect things on the ground there? How will this affect, do you think, if at all, Netanyahu's decision to annex the West Bank?
It's not a surprise what President Abbas said yesterday, but Netanyahu has a clear path of what he planned to do regarding West Bank and regarding the settlements. It's a power plan that started in 2009, so it's already 11 years of this plan, and I don't think personally that he's going to stop. It's important what President Abbas said yesterday, but it's not very clear what he's going to do about it, what he's planned to do about it, and especially regarding security. When we think about Area B in the West Bank, where there's a joint administration between Israel and Palestine, especially regarding security, it's not very clear what he's going to do and what he's planned to do. But it's very important. It was very important, his statement. And I don't think that Netanyahu is going to sit back, because he's already very further in his plan nowadays.
All right, so then, Daoud, how do you think that this will change the Israeli calculation at this point? Do you think Netanyahu will stick to his guns?
There's two things that we have to see. If the Israelis, the last time the Yasser Arafat made a similar position, the Israelis literally moved their tanks into Ramallah. So that's the first question, whether the Israelis will escalate and try to push the Palestinians and see what will happen, or whether they will try to take a low profile and basically let the Palestinians stay in their very small areas, but not do anything more than that. I think the question is going to be that, and also what the American and international community will say. If the EU and others will continue to support the Palestinian government or entity or whatever you want to call it, then I think it's going to be almost a black hole. There's going to be a legal black hole that exists in the West Bank unless there is some kind of a new agreement.
So this is potentially quite explosive, is it not? Do you not think? Where we already know that the Trump Middle East peace plan was formed without the Palestinian involvement, right? This is, I imagine, the only way that the Palestinian Authority had, peacefully at least, to make its voice heard. Will the Americans now hear the Palestinian voice?
It's very hard to say, especially right now with the coronavirus crisis around the world. We don't know if Israel intends to pursue this annexation right now, or they're going to wait, because Netanyahu has more or less 18 months as a prime minister with his agreement with Benny Gantz. So we don't know if he's going to pursue this right now. But United States is going to I think wait right now because of the coronavirus crisis, but Trump's position since his proposition and since his plan, his peace plan he presented earlier this year, is probably going to stick with his position and stick with his plan, his peace plan that he proposed earlier this year.
Daoud, you are speaking to some other experts, and they were saying that potentially all this talk about annexation of the West Bank, the occupied West Bank, is just a lot of, it's a lot just for public consumption to keep that part of the Israeli population which wants this to happen happy, especially, of course, the settler population. Do you think that's true? Do you think that the Israelis are sort of just, this is all just hot air on their part, and they're not actually going to go through with this?
I do. I think that the Israelis will not carry out the annexation on July 1st. I think the reasons that led Netanyahu to push for annexation in the election campaign was to get the right-wing Zionist parties like Yamina to join him. Now that they have not joined him in the government, the cost of making an annexation and possibly getting the anger of Merkel and Macron and the British and even some of the other countries, I don't think it's worth it for him. He likes to have those good relations with the international community. And Netanyahu is really not an ideologue. He's a smart politician. And I think if he would weigh the benefit of making the annexation versus getting the Jordanians angry, getting the Arabs angry, obviously losing the Oslo Accords, getting the Europeans angry, I think he will not carry it out on July 1st.
Okay, so Karina, what does that then mean for the plan then? Because within the Middle East plan, it essentially does give Israel this carte blanche, doesn't it? So do you think that even the Israelis are sort of, in a way, if they don't go ahead with the annexation, admitting that this plan may be unviable on the ground?
Yes, sure. Israel has now America's support, more or less. It's not a full support as Netanyahu wanted, as Netanyahu expected, but it's a support. So he's going to probably take it for now, but we have to consider the coronavirus crisis again. And we have to consider that Netanyahu is being investigated with 4 corruption cases, and he has, we don't know how much time until he's being prosecuted and by Israeli justice. So he's going to probably rush a little bit things because he has little time. We don't know exactly. And he's going to probably take this America's indication of support seriously and pursue his plan, because it's a very clear plan since he began his government in 2009.
That's a good point, isn't it? Where right now Netanyahu doesn't actually know what's going to happen through these trials, right? Where he's even supposed to appear in person. So I wonder, do you not think at some level he'll want his legacy to be seen as one which is, supportive of even the Israeli right?
I mean, this is the one area that he might be interested in his legacy. But as I said, he's more, he's in power for many years, and he will be in power at least another 18 months. I think the American support is questionable. When Pompeo visited Israel last week, he did not speak about the annexation. And Kushner has said that the idea of annexation has to be part of an exchange of land, a land swap. It's not a unilateral action. So I think the Americans want to use the threat of the annexation to lure the Palestinians into accepting the Trump plan, which will not happen. But I think they are in a bind, and the Israelis are in a bind. And I think Gantz, it depends how Gantz is going to play it. I mean, Pompeo basically gave the veto power, which was taken away from him in the negotiations, back to Gantz. And if Gantz sees that the Jordanians are serious, things in the West Bank are going to erupt, I think he will try to delay it.
Very well. Karina, final word before I let both of you go. What do you think the Palestinians will do next, right? We've already had this threat by Mahmoud Abbas. At this point, they're the party, as I put to you earlier as well, who has not been brought into this conversation about the peace plan. Will that, do you think they'll be able to force themselves in now? And what does that then mean for the future?
Right now, it's important that the Palestinian Authority clear out what they intend to do about it, and it not stay only as a statement, only as something that happened before, something that already the President Abbas already stated before, and do something very clear about what they intend to do. And it's very important to stay against annexation, and especially in security. So right now we have different situations in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and this is one of the issues regarding government and regarding administration between Palestinian territories. So it's important to the Palestinian Authority a joint coordination with the Gaza Strip regarding Israel and regarding Netanyahu's policies now on.
Very well. And Daoud, we appreciate your time today and, of course, for the insight you've brought to the conversation. Viewers, I'll be back right after this break continuing this conversation because it's an important one to have. The implications, if all of this does go through in the way that the Palestinian president has spoken about, can possibly be quite immense on the ground. I'll be back after this break. Welcome back, viewers. You're still here on Scope with me, Waqar Rizvi. We're going to continue to discuss Mahmoud Abbas's statement about walking away from agreements with the Israelis as well as the Americans at this point, and the impact of that possibly on the ground, and also on Israel's decision, if that goes through with that, to annex the West Bank. We're now joined by Raphael Lagnado, who is a risk analyst at Valeurs International. He's joining us now from Sao Paulo. And joining us from Rio de Janeiro is Michel, who is the coordinator of the Interdisciplinary Center for Jewish and Arab Studies of the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. Michel and Raphael, thank you both for your time this morning. Michel, let me start with you. What do you make of Abbas's decision? How much of an impact will this have?
Yeah, good morning. The situation is very complicated because if Abbas really intends to go out from the agreement, we can have many problems in security areas, for example, and also in economic developments inside Israel and a Palestinian Authority. So if it's the final situation, we are going to have a completely new situation in Palestinian Authority and its relation with Israel.
So, Raphael, what kind of a relationship will we then have? I mean, right now, what I've understood is that Abbas is maintaining some authority still, according to what I've understood, vis-a-vis having some sort of a Palestinian leadership structure still. But nevertheless, how do you think the Israelis are viewing this?
Good morning, Waqar. So far, this has been a battle of statements because neither has Netanyahu taken any concrete action so far to actually annex the Jordan Valley, nor has Mahmoud Abbas taken any concrete action to dissolve the PA. They have both been using these statements as threats. I think Abbas is trying right now to, let's say, safeguard his reputation or maybe save his biography, because he has a history of being a member of the PLO and the Fatah. And for the past 25 years, he has been labeled a collaborationist with the Israeli government in constructing the whole PA. And what he's trying to do now is establishing a line. After which he says, "I've been tolerating Israel this far. I will not tolerate anything that encompasses annexation."
Okay, so then on that point, that's a good point, because this is not the first time Abbas has made this threat, right? He made this threat in July 2019, in February 2020, and now he's made this threat again. And this time around, apparently, notifications have been sent to both the Americans and the Israelis that the Palestinians are serious this time. But do you think that, as Raphael there said, that this is just essentially a game of rhetoric, essentially, on the part of both sides, where, Netanyahu keeps saying that I'm going to annex the West Bank, and Abbas now says I'm going to walk away from the Israelis. What do you make of that?
I think that inside of Palestinian Authority, the situation is pretty different now. Some of the Palestinian Israeli work groups already are not working together anymore. And Abbas already said to the partners all over the world that the situation is different now. This is the Abbas situation. In Israeli perspectives, I think the situation is very different again. The real group that want to annex the West Bank, that is the right party, Yemina, is not in the government. And the pressure that Netanyahu is suffering to annex the West Bank came from the United States, from the evangelical groups in the United States of America. So I think the situation and the point of annexation is less important than it looks in this moment. What's more important for Abbas is the possibility of agreement that the United States wants to make with Israel because of American elections. So many times we're thinking about Israel and Palestinian relationship, and we forget that the situation and the real situation is more connected to Trump political situation than with the Israeli-Palestinian political situation. So I think that Abbas is looking at Netanyahu's eyes, but he's thinking about Trump ideas.
Interesting. Well, do you agree with that? Do you think this has a lot more to do with the U.S. elections? That would make sense, certainly, because playing the Israel card seems to support presidents or incumbents.
Well, I would say I partly agree. It certainly, let's say, rings a tone with the American evangelical electorate to take a pro-Israel stance. But this is also a campaign promise from Netanyahu himself. You can say that is what caused many of his party, Likud supporters, to rally around him. And this is also a point of, let's say, agreement within his coalition. His main coalition partner, the Blue and White Party from General Benny Gantz, also supports the annexation of the Jordan Valley, specifically the Jordan Valley, not the West Bank, as a whole. So I've been saying this is a game of rhetoric so far, but we never know. Both sides could do well under threats, but especially Netanyahu. Now, he knows that Abbas can pull the card of dissolving the PA and effectively putting all major Palestinian cities in the West Bank into perhaps a state of anarchy, perhaps obligating Israel to take direct control over these densely populated Palestinian areas once again. But that's as much as Abbas can do. What Netanyahu can do is strengthen Israel. What Abbas can do is, let's say, increase the costs of Israeli control, direct Israeli control over the West Bank.
Okay, so let's talk about the hypothetical situation then, Michel. If there were to be Israeli direct control over Palestinians, what kind of an impact would that have?
We really don't know exactly. The point is that the relationship between the PA and Israel now is very, very connected to security issues more than everything else. Of course, we have some economic elements, but the question of security is very important to Israel and to Palestinian Authority, because Hamas is not connected to exactly the PA orders, and the situation of not having the connection with the Israeli authorities in the question of security can bring us to other situations than we knew today. So the possibility of a new or third intifada is always in the horizon. It's not good to Israel, and it's not good to the Palestinian Authority as well. So if you ask me about the direct results of this hypothetical situation, I would point to the security element, to security results, to a new kind of intifada in the horizon.
Do you see that happening, Raphael? Because, right now it just seems like, at least from the outside in, it seems like the Palestinians are just sort of tired of this entire situation as well.
Well, I'm sure the Palestinians are tired of armed struggle in general. But yes, I can see an intifada taking place. It's hard to predict when, how this will begin, and with what strength, because many people thought a new intifada would come with the moving of the American embassy to Jerusalem, and that didn't take place. But I do believe that if Israel annexes the Jordan Valley and the PA does good on its threat to dissolve itself, and then Israel is obligated to take control of, and you see Israeli tanks and Israeli army in Ramallah, in Hebron, in Bethlehem, in these areas where Palestinians have been accustomed over the past 25 years to be ruled, at least nominally, by a Palestinian body of government, however weak it is, that could cause a serious security backlash in these large cities.
All right. Michel, what do you make of how the rest of the world has reacted to just even the possibility of Israel annexing the West Bank and Jordan Valley? We've had the Europeans come out very strongly against that. We've had many people coming out strongly against that, traditional Israeli allies, except, of course, the United States. Does that play into the calculus for Israel?
Yeah, it played. Again, the situation of the world after Corona crisis in Israel, because here we are inside the Corona crisis, but in Israel it's after, and the Middle East is after the Corona crisis, is different from the situation before the Corona crisis. And of course, before the Corona crisis, Israel saw itself as much more stronger than it is now. So it could play with the cards more with the United States and more with Europe countries. Now the situation is very different. I think that the reactions, not only in Europe allies of the United States, but of Israel, but also in Arab countries, is stronger than it was before. I see some reactions of Arab countries against the annexation that I could not see before that. So I think that the situation is not clear, but I would say that the annexation of West Bank and even of some part of the West Bank is much more complicated now than it was before that. I would not say that we are waiting for it happens in any place and in any time in the near future. I think the annexation is much less possible today than it was in January or March in this year.
That's a good point, Raphael. When it comes to even the regional countries, there was always talk, right, of if there was a deal which even the Palestinians signed on to, then essentially a lot of these countries would then, openly come out and say, fine, we'll accept Israel. Do you think that that all has been put on back burner right now because of a coronavirus, as Michel there said, and secondly, the situation in the region has changed, and thirdly, this entire talk about annexation has turned many of them off?
I think it has turned not only the other Middle Eastern players off, but as you said, other traditional allies of Israel, except for the United States, which has caused Netanyahu to essentially double down on his alliance with Trump. He's basically counting on Trump being reelected. That is reasonable probability. And he believes that that will allow him to essentially pursue whatever policy he is intending to do, regardless of the coronavirus outbreak or not.
All right, so I'll have to leave there as a final word. I do appreciate both Raphael and Michel for their time today this morning, speaking to us from Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, respectively. We appreciate the insight of all four of our guests. Daoud was speaking to us earlier from Amman as well. And all of them have spoken about the fact that there's a lot of rhetoric on both sides. And this is not a new game, certainly. The Palestinians and the Israelis have both played these cards over these years. However, there very much is still the possibility that Netanyahu may act on this campaign promise of his to annex the occupied West Bank as well as the Jordan Valley. And Mahmoud Abbas may very well end all agreements, including security agreements with Israel. I mean, we have to wait and see exactly what both of these players will do in the coming days on the ground to see and to feel the real impact for Palestinians and what exactly happens next. Are we heading to an intifada? Are we heading to further resistance of other kinds? All of the above possibilities certainly exist at this time. I'll be back with my next segment after this break. Welcome back, viewers. You're still here on Scope with me, Waqar Rizvi. In this segment, we're going to discuss Guantanamo Bay. Now, that's a topic we haven't discussed in a while now, but it has been quite a few years since that entire jail was set up, that prison was set up to handle terrorists or suspected terrorists. And many of their trials are still continuing. But now there's the added challenge of coronavirus and the entire need for social distancing, the fact that many of their attorneys cannot directly then meet clients. There's a number of complications within the process, certainly. And there's, of course, a lot of criticism, and there's always been criticism of Guantanamo Bay and the way it's run to begin with. And secondly, even the way that these trials are run. There's a lot of debate about whether or not these are respecting international laws, as well as even just American laws themselves about how all these suspects are being handled, how they're being tried, whether or not the government has really given lawyers the opportunity to defend their clients properly. There have been accusations in the past of bugs being set up in rooms where attorneys are meeting their clients, as well as even the hiring or the convincing, really, of somebody to become an informant for the government who was within the defense team of one of those suspected terrorists. Let's discuss all of that a bit further. We're now joined by Darrin, who is a criminal justice expert and television commentator. He's joining us now this morning from New York. Darrin, as always, thank you for your time. What do you make, firstly, of the added hurdle of Guantanamo Bay in the midst of COVID-19 and its trials?
Well, I can speak from a practitioner at this stage as an expert. I oftentimes testify in criminal trials here in the United States, and I'm also being hampered by the efforts, I shouldn't say the recent policies in connection with the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, right now I have a trial in Philadelphia and I have a trial in Florida, and one has been put off. The trial that I have in Philadelphia has been put off, but the trial that I have in Florida has now reverted to a Zoom, so to speak, and it presents a significant challenge in a dynamic of representing a client. So Guantanamo Bay is nothing different, and I think it's more an evolution in how do we deal with introducing testimony or discovery for clients that are being represented in the criminal trials process. Now, granted, at Guantanamo Bay, those are military tribunals, so there's somewhat of a difference, but the aspect of representing a client is somewhat the same. And so I think that we're all building the plane as we learn to fly it in connection with how we roll out these trials. Because one of the things that we want to do in all cases is we want to try the accused as quickly as possible, because we'll either establish that one will hold that person in custody, or we can get that person out. And when I say get that person out, meaning remove that person from the system and make way for the next defendant to come in. So it's an arduous task, but this is something that's that we're dealing with on a day-to-day.
Darrin, what do you make the entire way that Guantanamo is being run? I mean, I know it's a very macro question, but we're talking now, what, 14, 15 years since Guantanamo has been set up specifically to handle suspected terrorists. Of course, these men still very much need to go through these trials. The question, there's so many questions to really be asked, isn't it? Firstly, just the human rights issues which have come up, torture, all of the above. And secondly, then, why has it taken so long for these trials to even occur?
Well, that's a very interesting dynamic. When we look at these military tribunals, they're oftentimes the information is closed off to public access. I guess based on the negative nature, the nature of these cases. It's a very delicate nature connected with this. I was an officer in the Army, and I look to the military tribunals as something that is necessary. But the process is one of these things that's ever so evolving. Do people that come into custody deserve a right to be represented? Absolutely. Should justice be swift in that the trial should come up as quickly as possible? I totally agree with that. But when you look at the sensitive nature of these military tribunals, you're now looking to extract discovery information from places overseas that may be somewhat of an arduous task to introduce the discovery from places like Afghanistan, Iraq, etc., in connection with these terrorists that are coming in front of us. Do these people deserve a fair trial? Absolutely. But I think a lot of the issues in terms of the slowness in the process evolve around the sensitive nature in extracting this information. And that's what's taking such a long time.
So why firstly just set up this entire prison and this entire process on Guantanamo Bay? Why not do it on the U.S. mainland? Because, I was reading about how complicated the logistical process just is to get all of the above involved in these trials and tribunals just transported from the mainland onto Guantanamo. It takes planes and planes of people coming and going. Why not just do this on the mainland? It seems logistically more simple, but is it more, do you think, to do with American laws? I mean, is that coming into play here?
Absolutely, because when a person is tried on American soil, that's when they fit within the provisions of the Constitution and the constitutional amendments. As a military tribunal, by being held off the United States land, so to speak, either being held outside of the United States, then those individuals are not apprised of the rights afforded to them by the Constitution. And that was the specific concern of having these military tribunals. These are people that don't have rights under the First, Fifth, 14th Amendment, 8th Amendment, et cetera.
Indeed, and then there's the entire argument, which you well know about Guantanamo detainees and how many of them ended up there, right? There's so much to discuss within that regard. But do you think that those concerns about how that entire process played out, about how these men ended up there, does that, do you think, affect what the outcome of their respective trials will be?
Well, in one aspect, it does. When we take in consideration how these people came into the custody of the United States, these are oftentimes terrorist acts that have been committed on the battlefield, so to speak. So just based on the sensitive nature of that, it's going to require a different type of investigation. Now, I'm a firm proponent in everyone that comes into custody is innocent until proven guilty. However, under the purview of the military tribunals, oftentimes it's a major process in just trying to establish the discovery to represent these individuals, coupled with the dangerous aspect of introducing these trials. You're bringing some really dangerous people into custody. You're taking some really dangerous people into custody, and you're providing a trial that can possibly engage a level of danger from external entities. And it's seen best as having these trials in a military setting, as opposed to having it in a in a justice setting, a Department of Justice setting here in the United States. So they're very different challenges in terms of security. And I'm a firm believer in these people should come into custody and be tried as quickly as possible. But the dynamic is very different in connection with a military tribunal.
Okay, we'll leave there as a final. We do sincerely appreciate your time today, Darrin, this morning, and of course for giving us your insight on this as somebody who, of course, knows American law very well and military tribunals and how they function. Because for a lot of us on the outside, this entire talk about Guantanamo Bay for all of these years has been one disappointment after another in how the U.S. judicial system works, especially when it comes to a lot of these men who have not been proven to be guilty. That's very important to remember that right now, these are all just allegations. So if we're talking about them committing terrorist acts, that still needs to be proven in a court of law somehow, at least respecting what America's ideals are and its moral authority around the world says it should be doing at this point. So this process is that much more complicated because the government has put in obstacles throughout the process. As I put in my introduction as well, there have been bugs found in attorney-client rooms. There's also been informants discovered within defense teams who are working for the government. All of that leaves a bad taste in the mouth. Does the American government really want to deal with the situation with Guantanamo property in a professional fashion, in a fashion which is just for many of these men who possibly are very innocent at this point in time? We'll keep a close eye on that, of course, here in Scope. I'll leave it there for now. I've been Waqar Rizvi. Thanks for watching.